He is the head coach of the Washington Commanders in his first season as such. He is Dan Quinn here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Coach?
Rich, I'm doing good, man. It's good to be on with you. And it's cool, man. We're getting ready to head up to New Jersey. So we'll get a practice in with the Jets tomorrow and then a game with them on Saturday. So the first part of the camp has gone well, man. Guys competing against one another, but we're definitely looking forward to taking it on the road and heading up to Jersey to visit with those guys.
How's it feel to get the HC whistle back for a training camp, Dan?
Yeah, it's good, man. It's definitely something, that having the connection with these coaches and the players here and building it all together with Adam. It's been a cool process to go through from free agency through the draft and adding this group together and like putting the whole thing. It's a lot of fun, man. There's a lot of new faces, both inside and out on the field. And so bringing all of that group together, man, like that's as cool as it gets.
So listen, obviously you've got an approach that's successful. We can establish that. And coaches are frequently quite set in their way. But how are you informed by your Atlanta experience as well as returning to the coordinator role? How is that informing your 2.0 version of yourself, if there's such a thing?
That's
Coach?
a good question, Rich. And it definitely is different. And I think you want to learn from those lessons that you had. Otherwise, the pain of going whatever you learned, isn't worth it. So there was definitely some things about Atlanta that I liked. And going to Dallas, I was able to apply some of the things I'd like to try differently, whether that had been in teaching or how to, change on a scheme or using different players, Rich, in different positions where maybe, there's a receiver that can play a running back, a safety that can play down to linebacker, a linebacker to play down to end. So having some position flexibility, the Dallas allowed me to do that. That experience with Parsons and Curse and others to move them around, that was a big deal. And then heading back into here as the head coach, applying different things that we started off training camp in the red zone. And so that wasn't anything that we had done before, but it proved to be really valuable, both for the players and for the staff to get rolling. So just a couple of small examples, but yeah, it's definitely 2.0. You want to learn from it and then try, to apply the new lessons to it.
How about philosophy in terms of staff or communicating with players? Again, I understand, you have your DNA there, but I'm just wondering if it's any different here.
Yeah, I think for sure the staff part, that's usually to make sure that the message comes from me through the staff down to the locker room. Usually as a coach, you've done a good job when you've heard a player say something or, their behaviors or actions or something that, you might have relayed in a staff meeting and then it got down to the player. So seeing that connection build between players and coaches, the staff itself, those take time, but it's been really cool to see these guys connect fast. We had a Bill Walsh fellow intern that was in recently, and he had said, I would have thought you guys would have been together 3 or 4 years, not 1 year. That made me feel good to know that this connection is happening fast and strong.
And how about the fact that you are the face-forward individual for a new ownership group in a town with a fan base that is eager for a page turn, to say the least, Coach?
Yeah, it's really cool, man, because like the Commanders, the organization, and like football here in the DMV, like it's really important, man. And so like for me, growing up in New Jersey, the NFC East and New York and Washington and Philly and Dallas and the battles that went, I can imagine, or I could recall a number of Sundays watching, John Madden and Summerall calling, games that were here. And so knowing to be part of this historic franchise, it's a really big deal. I can, even thinking back to, leaving Dallas and having a visit with Jerry Jones and saying how important this franchise is to the NFL. So when Josh and Adam, went through that process with them and they offered me the job, man, it was like, this is the spot. And every once in a while in your life, you're where you're supposed to be with the right people at the right time. And I certainly feel like that's this place here with me. And Josh and Adam were, at the very front of that.
We're right around the same age. I'm from Staten Island. You're born in Morristown, New Jersey. I remember Summerall and Brookshire calling the old Washington Dallas games where the Dallas offensive lineman would get up and get back down again. I remember those days. Dan.
Yeah, I remember going to training camp and, staying for 2 sessions just to watch the guys compete. And sometimes I think of that when you see the fans here. I was that kid, in high school or something, staying over at Fairleigh Dickinson to watch both practices and seeing Lawrence Taylor and others. And it was just like, yeah, I'll come pick me up at 5 o'clock. I'm just going to stay and watch football for today. So to be back in this area and with this organization, it feels really cool, Rich.
Wait a minute, you hit training camp as a kid in Jersey? Was it the Parcells era?
Yes,
early Parcells?
100%.
Really?
Yeah. So like, yeah, Leonard Marshall and Harry Carson and LT and Bavaro and Sims, like that whole crew, Joe Morris, like seeing those guys and going to practice, as a young kid and watching that, that was kind of where, it first started to love football. Yeah. So seeing Parcells coach and the toughness, like I can remember Romeo Cornell and Belichick and others, just watching the whole thing, man.
And now you're somebody that could break the hearts of a kid that age now up there, Dan. Twice a year. That's your job to do that.
Exactly. So it's never lost on me, man. How cool it is and the opportunity here. So like having a second lap at it, you're not going to miss it. And I'm not going to miss it. So I just want to make sure all parts of it, man, go kick ass and have a lot of fun doing it.
Dan Quinn, the head coach of the Washington Commanders here on the Rich Eisen Show. When did you see Jayden Daniels and go, okay, that's it for me? When did that happen for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like probably it started even before that, like finding out about Adam. He might've been the first player that we watched together. And so knowing that he had already done all of this work on him, watch this game, watch this moment, and to see his ability to identify, the talent. So after that, we're watching some of the LSU, he goes, wait a second. And he put on like a game from ASU from maybe his like freshman year, Rich, where he was battling against Oregon or something. And it just kind of showed the competitor. And so he had done so much work on this player that he kind of said, look back to here, look back to here. During the interviews processes, it's harder to get to know the guy. So, meet him at the combine, first connection, and then down to LSU, we made some, but up here, when you have the guys come on the 30 visit, you knew the ball player was the right one. That was easy to see, Rich. A lot of us could see that. What you didn't know was what's the man like. And I was so impressed by him, the competitor, what he stood for. He's got the humility of a young rookie who's, on the way up with his work ethic and hunger, but he's also got the confidence and swagger of an older player, guy who's been seasoned some. So all that experience you saw from ASU and LSU and into here and the work ethic, it really comes in. But I thought, what a good balance that he has of confidence and humility. And Marcus Mariota is here, and he has a lot of that too. And so to see these guys work together, that's been really cool, Rich. So it was early to see the talent, but getting to know the guy under the helmet, that's what sealed it for me.
And how has he taken reins leadership-wise? Because that's got to happen here.
Yep. And I think that's what I saw, like that work ethic, like early on, he just didn't miss it. And so the other players were just noticing that this guy was on it, whether it was correcting a formation or making the correct read. And there's a difference between throwing it well and playing the position well. And I think everybody recognizes he can play the position well. That's checking a protection, the ball going to the right spot based on a coverage. And so that's really what it is. We've seen plenty of pro days look good when a guy's throwing onto air, but playing the position, the checks, in and out of pocket, good decisions, that's what it comes down to me. And so the other players saw that. I thought Zach Ertz said it well. He said, people were saying this guy's going to be good. Zach said he's already good. And I thought that was really well said by Zach Ertz.
So then when it comes to drafting somebody second overall, certainly for a franchise that is searching for a long-term answer at that position, and you having been in your previous stop of Atlanta, knowing the value of somebody at that position, and you can win an MVP with them and go on to a Super Bowl with them. The question stands to reason, why are you having a competition at all? And obviously that's an outside-in question. I'd love for the top of the flow chart inside out to answer that, if you don't mind.
No, it's a fair question, and it's a good question because it's also my first experience going through it with a first-year quarterback. During my time in Seattle, Russ was young, but he was going into his second year. My time in Atlanta was Matt and then Dak in Dallas. So with Jayden, we just didn't want to miss one step. That's all it was, Rich. To make sure we're going through the process. He's getting plenty of reps, but we wanted to go through the practices against another team. And so going through all those steps, just making sure we're not missing one of it along the way. So that's really what it's about, Rich. just making sure we hit every marker for him. And he's the type of competitor that wants to do that. He gets a lot of the reps with the first group, but we just weren't going to mess with that process. We really believed in it. We believe in him, and we wanted to make sure he was just hitting all the markers, Rich. So that, nothing more than that.
And I heard you say he earned the right to take on the Jets as the starter this week.
Okay. And based on the performance, through the spring and into training camp. And so when people do that, you want to give them those opportunities. And the practice, Rich, against the Jets, those count too, where you get some chance to go compete. He'll actually, likely get more reps at practice, than he will in the game. And so that's why having those practices before you play a game, they can add a lot of value. It's different looks. The Jets are going to play excellent defense. I certainly know Jeff Ulbrich and a lot of their players well. So what a great, opportunity for us to, take it on the road for a couple of days up to Jersey and play against those guys, both at the practice and at the game.
And again, I know this might be a question Dan Quinn better posed to the general manager, Adam Peters, as opposed to you, but the concept of adding a weapon, say, for Jayden Daniels that he might be familiar with, they might have gone to college together. Any truth to that idea that the Commanders are in that front? Dan Quinn?
Like you said, that would be a better question for.
I shouldn't have answered.
You knew it, but you had to take your shot. You took the bat off your shoulder. That's true Staten Island way. You go take your shot. And for guys like you and me, Staten Island, Wu-Tang Clan, everybody else.
That's. I'll give you one from your past then. I guess I'm just competing. I'm trying to always compete with people here, Dan,
So that's how it feels. It doesn't feel very good when you do that. My wife calls it "Don't Dan Quinn me," with the question back to it. So I was like, okay, my fault.
So wait a minute. If your wife says to you something along the lines, "Are you going to pick this thing up when you come on the way home from work?" You could say to her, "I don't have a crystal ball." You could say that sort of stuff. You can use the coaching cliches with your wife.
It does not work after 29 years. Yeah, don't Dan Quinn me. Just let me have the facts. Yeah.
Very nice. Okay, and then defensively, what can you tell Commanders fans what this unit is going to look like coming up this year?
Yeah, I think for the fans and for the people watching, I'd hope what they would see, is the identity, beginning to take shape, and the speed of the defense, the physicality, and really the ball hawking mindset. And if in our game today, you better be a good tackling team. There's so much space that happens. So against our offense, they create a lot of space at practice, so that the tackling, the ball hawk, the speed of the defense, those are the things over these next 3 weeks. I'm hopeful that you start to see that identity take shape. And so it's good matchups, man. We got the Jets this week. We go down to Miami and go with them for a while. So getting to get tested against speed and established, quarterbacks and systems for the defense, I think it's a great opportunity over the next couple of weeks, Rich, to really, go battle and see where you stand.
I asked this question of Doug Peterson, your colleague in Jacksonville yesterday, and there's a lot of discussion going on amongst the head coaches in the NFL about the new kickoff rule.
Yes.
So let me ask you the standard questions, if you will, that's going on right now, which is the idea that nobody's going to show a single hand or a single play in the preseason. No one's going to do that. But then there's a question of how to figure out how this is going to work out in the regular season. Sean Payton's already said he thinks placing the ball on the 30-yard line for a touchback is not it won't cause you to think twice if a game's tight, that you'd rather just give up that field position. He wants to move it to the 35 to make things a little bit more risky for a touchback late in the game. I've just placed all that on the floor. What do you think about this, Coach?
Well, one, I'm excited for it, Rich. I think it adds a lot back to it. And you've seen the games where, for instance, in the Super Bowl, it's kicked off, touchback. It almost became like, hey, this is just how we'll start it. So there's going to be game-breaking plays on the return. There'll be some hits and some turnovers, on the kickoff and the covering team to go. So there's a lot to learn, but I think it's going to add stuff to the game as we're working through. Will it look the same this year as moving forward? Is there, rules and things to tweak? Yes, but does it hit the ground? Is it in the air? Those are the things I think as you go through the preseason and into maybe the first quarter of the regular season, that you'll see a lot of different techniques. And as the return goes, some people think of it, hey, this is going to be more like running backs where it's a zone play and you can hit a crease and go. Others are going to find, different returners who have the traditional return side to them using it. But at the end of it, man, it's space and speed, just like special teams mostly is. That's what's going to make the big decisions on those plays.
So do you agree that we won't see much in the preseason?
I would agree. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it'll be more traditional, more standard. And quite often, there's usually a little bit less game planning, that goes on in the preseason, Rich, just to get the evaluations on the players. Can this guy run? Can he cover? Can he make tackles? So I do think that you'll see less, and it'll be like a big uptick once we get to the regular season.
So, and what about Sean Payton's idea that maybe you should put the ball on the 35 for a touchback, because late in the game, again, you're a defensive guy. You'd rather, I would imagine, say, let my defense handle it than run the risk of somebody hitting the crease and getting a cheap 7 on me to try and tie this game up late. And I'll just let my defense play 70 yards. No?
Or tackle them inside the 20.
Okay.
So like, yeah, Sean's right that I think just the nature of it, Rich, that like we're going to have more returns than we've had in a really long time. Mm-hmm. So I think like big picture wise, if you're looking at it from 10,000 feet, that's what we're trying to accomplish. Now, last 2 minutes of the game, onside, how we're doing those things, like kickoffs after a safety, like these are all things that like, well, how is that going to look? So we're still, going through those. But by and large, I think there's going to be a lot of energy that comes from this. And I think the returns, like just, recently over the weekend to see Devin Hester, I think players like Devin, now that opportunity for really big plays is back. And I think that's a really significant thing, because there would have been a significant portion of his career that missed on some opportunities for all these kick returns. And so I think it's really cool for returners who have like special traits that it's back, and how do we go use them?
Yeah, I mean, Devin Hester going into the Hall of Fame was incredible. He was, yes. You coached him, right?
In Atlanta. And, like, remarkable player. And like, I could tell you, even coaching against him, when you went to punt or kickoff and you're like, just hit it out of bounds, man. Right. Like, we'll take it. Like, this is a super, risky one. And so when you have another weapon that's at your disposal to use, a guy like Devin, man, like he was an incredible player, man, incredible competitor. And he changed games, Rich. He definitely did by his returns, and not just on the touchdowns, like he had 1,000 more 25, 50-yard returns that, caused points and field position changes. So I'm really happy that we're going to give this a real go and let guys, hopefully that are as talented as Devin to make their mark. Last one for you. At Tampa, week 1, you put the headset on. What do you think you're going to be feeling? What do you think? Yeah, well, I think one, a lot of gratitude, to be back into this spot with these people and going for it. There's a lot of new players here, Rich. And so to build those connections with those guys and to go do, this program together with them, like I have a real appreciation for how hard everybody's going for it. And so I think more than anything, probably the gratitude to be in this spot with these people at this time. And before we close, it'd be wrong to say how well your fellow Wolverine is doing here too, man. So, yes. Like, well, listen, fantastic start, dude. He's really a rare competitor. You know how to reach me, Dan. All right, I was going to let you go, but now I refuse. Tell me about him. What do you think? What made, first of all, what made you fall in love with him, and what's he going to do for you this fall, Mikey Sanders? Yeah, he's got like football instincts well past his ability. I think part of that may come from his receiver background early on. You see the ball skills, the ability to go track it, the tackling. Him and Jayden have similar traits, that they're very confident, but they also have the humility and the hard work of the younger guy. So it was very cool to see separate people like who have similar traits about them as ball players and as men, to say they're going to stand for really high standards and go. So for years to come, those two are going to have incredible standards, of what we want to be about here. So I wanted to share that with you, man. This guy, he's like as for a young guy, I've got really high standards, and he is right near the top of that, of what he can be. So I'm really pumped to see what he can do. One of my favorites, honestly. I went to the school starting in '86. I would put him in top 10 of my favorite Wolverines because of his beginning, his decision to go to defense, to make what he's made of himself, and it's not just balling out. He was a leader. He was, people followed him,
And he knew that, and he took that on as a responsibility. He oozes it. It's just every part of his fiber of his being. And I'm thrilled to hear that you consider him a pillar, because he certainly was at Michigan, man.
Like, I think early on when we're younger, we think of leading, it's like about us. And then now as I'm older, it's really finding and developing the leader within others. And so Mike's a great example of that he's got leadership stuff to him in such a big way. And it's hard to lead as a rookie, but he has those traits to do it based on his humility, work ethic, talent, performance side. So, we're really pumped to have him here.
That's great. Hey, thanks for the time. Greatly appreciated. Is Adam Peters walking down the hallway? Maybe you can pull him in so I can ask him the question. No? Taking him?
No, I don't see him.
Just taking another shot. All right, just took one. Oh, he's on the phone to the West Coast. Maybe that's what he's doing. All right, Coach. Thanks for the time.
All right.
Greatly appreciate the time. Good luck to you, and we'll speak during the season. I hope. And it's great to see you back as the HC, Dan Quinn.
I appreciate it, Rich.
You got it. HC of the Washington Commanders, Dan Quinn, DQ, with the LFG behind him, right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.